YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 102. This is our second issue in this new era that we started with Melissa Flores as the new writer. Kind of a refresh, remerging the comics into one thing. And we started off last issue really strong, I thought. I really enjoyed it, but this issue, in my opinion, was even better. There is a lot I like about what's going on, a lot I'm interested in the future. I definitely have some concerns about some things, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it. Where we left off was the Rangers wound up responding to a distress call at Zedd's base, and Rita is back as Mistress Vile. She's all amped up, and she has everybody scared, including Zedd. And this week but this week we have them facing off against Mistress Vile. And again, it's really good. We actually open up the issue, as we often do with the flashback, which contextualizes an aspect of the story. And this one is about when Matt first introduced Zach and Trini to Kim, back when they were dating. Zach and Trini and Kim kind of hit it off and wind up kind of forgetting that Matt's there and go off and talk, and he's like, oh, I guess you guys forgot about me. And that kind of is used to amplify one of the aspects of Matt's character is he kind of got left behind by this group, you know, because he was sort of a member of this friend group and then got left behind when they became Rangers. And that's been something that they've touched on multiple times with his character throughout the story, and it's specifically used for a touchstone for something that happens at the end, which I really like. And I like the way they do these flashbacks. I talked about last week how some people were complaining about the flashback of Zedd and Rita being like, oh, more needless backstory, which I like the backstory because the show lacks backstory and depth and content and anything. But I like those in general. But I like the way the comics will use these as a clear thematic touchstone for something that's happening, which what happens to Matt at the end is a lot about the way he feels about himself, which I'll get to in a second. One of my other favorite things about this was seeing Rita square off against both Tommy and Matt. I think I mentioned in the last review for the comic is that I was curious to see if she had any kind of reaction or would have any sort of interesting interactions with Matt as the Green Ranger. Because obviously she was hugely tied in with the original Green Ranger. The idea of a new Green Ranger that was somebody that wasn't Tommy was obviously something that was not in the show universe or the original timeline. So I was really interested to see their interactions, and she actually called attention to it, like, oh, you know, there's a new Green Ranger, like, should I know you? You know, I was tied into the Green Ranger. And she remembers Matt, too, from when, I believe it was when she kidnapped him. I don't remember if it was Go-Go or the original, but I believe that's why she remembers him, which was really interesting. And it was cool to see those interactions and the fight between them. And then he winds up sacrificing himself so that they can get away. And he basically says more or less, you know, I'm just kind of the disposable, forgettable one you leave behind. And kind of a sad moment, to be honest. And it really ties into the flashback, but also something that's been reoccurring about his character throughout his presence. I don't recall them touching on it all too often when he first became the Green Ranger, but it's something they've definitely touched on in the past with his character, and it was kind of a nice moment for his character, and I thought it was interesting to have this interaction with Rita, and I'm definitely interested in them doing more with him, as once he became the Green Ranger and the initial reactions to it, I really felt that they kind of let Matt's character and the Green Ranger fall by the wayside. And I mentioned last week too, or last issue, that I'm disappointed that we didn't do more with him working separately from the team with Grace and the different ideologies of Rangers before we had him working with the Rangers. I'm definitely interested to see him working with the Rangers, but I felt that we, you know, lost a lot of potential there. And now that he's in the hands of Rita, there's some interesting stuff, but I definitely have mixed thoughts. I'm worried that she's going to make him evil and we're going to have Evil Green Ranger 2.0. Like, admittedly, there is potentially some interesting stuff there, and I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and watch it play out. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to do that again. I think that there's room for an interesting dynamic with Rita and the Green Ranger, but it's kind of like with Draken. When they brought Draken back, I was like, please don't redeem Draken because Tommy is the Draken redemption story. So it's the same thing with this. It's like we've already done the Evil Green Ranger and Evil Draken. We don't need a third Evil Green Ranger. Again, willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. Not saying there's not interesting potential there with her possibly putting him under a spell or something, but I think it would be redundant in my opinion. Plus, I think there's far more interesting material to be drawn from him being mentored by Grace. I mean, I've talked about this before, but one of my favorite things about the Green Ranger storyline was the visual parallel and the thematic parallel they drew between the Green Ranger Tommy being mentored by Rita and Green Ranger Matt being mentored by Grace. I'm like, there's some really interesting opportunity for some parallels there. with the Grace character instead of using Rita again. Interesting stuff, but I have mixed thoughts. It's one of the things I have mixed thoughts on. It was also really cool and interesting to see Rita actually interact and fight with Tommy for the first time since he's been the White Ranger. He definitely got banged around a lot in this episode, I would say that out of instinct, and he has to be kind of carried out of there. And Rita does like depower Kim in the fight. I saw some people saying they think that she might not have her morpher because like when they arrive back on Earth, she's still demorphed. It could just be that she's demorphed, but there's definitely a possibility that maybe Rita somehow got a hand on her coin and maybe we're in for a cat storyline coming up. That's just some sheer fun speculation, but it was an interesting beat as well. Another thing that happened is, this kind of goes off of last issue, but Zedd is definitely not coming off the greatest in this. I have mixed thoughts on that. Again, I mentioned before, I think Zedd's put up on a bit of a pedestal. I'm not as mad about the way he's treated in this because I simply just don't care for the most part. But at the same time, it does kind of suck to see him. I don't necessarily mind him being defeated by Rita and being in this down place. It's more like I do wish he would have gotten a moment to shine as a villain before. I feel before Rita's appearance now, she's gotten multiple chances to shine and show her threat as a villain throughout her run in the comic. And Zedd really, in my opinion, hasn't gotten that. I really did like his backstory character-wise, but I don't think he's gotten a really good moment to shine as a villain yet in his run, and I wish he would have gotten one before we've gotten to this point. That's not to say we couldn't get a moment where Zedd redeems himself and gets a moment to shine after this, but it would have been nice to have a moment for him to shine before all this happened. So I can see why people are upset to a degree. I wish there was more balance with it. I don't mind it. It's meant to show how powerful Rita is, but there's always a chance he could make a comeback. I kind of hope, or not hope, but I think it would be cool if maybe they did an inverse on the dynamic of Rita and Zedd, as in the original timeline and the original show universe. They ultimately get married and team up, because Rita put him under a spell. Maybe it could be interesting if Zedd's arc is actually about him becoming powerful enough to best Rita or match Rita, but instead of defeating her, makes her an offer to join forces, and it could kind of be an inverse mirror of what happened in the original timeline. Maybe that's how they get to their alliance. I mean, for now, he's with Zordon and talking about how, strong Rita is, and there's kind of an alliance there, maybe something interesting. I have mixed thoughts on it, but there's some interesting stuff there to be sure, and it's mostly just meant to show how powerful Rita is now, which is why he's kind of so pathetic. The reason that she invaded the base is, as Zedd said, she got what she came for, which is the Zeo Crystal, which is where we leave off, which is Rita with the Zeo Crystal, which is very interesting. I mean, right now, we're still in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I don't foresee us changing to the Zeo costumes. I think it would be interesting if they ever did change to the Zeo costumes and kept it as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But it is interesting that we've been delving closer into Zeo aspects. I mean, with the comic in general, we've been delving into farther aspects of the Zordon era. We've highlighted Astronema and Andros, and we had Dark Spectre and several, Dark Spectre is really being built up in several different running comics and miniseries. But Zeo as well, we had the Zeo Crystal from Zedd's arc that turned him into this. We have the Zeo Crystal now. We have that Machine Empire adjacent guy that showed up during the last arc in Mighty Morphin that Rocky and Matt faced. It's definitely interesting that we're heading towards it. I mean, we still have Season 3 content, if they even do it, to use, in regards to Ninjor and the Alien Rangers and all that stuff. So I'm definitely intrigued by what we're doing here, and I'm interested to see where it goes. My mixed thoughts really mainly come down to not wanting to do Green Ranger 2.0 and wanting to see Zedd shine. But for the most part, this really, I think, hit the ground running and has me really intrigued about where we're going, and I feel we're going in really different places, and I'm interested to see how any mmpr Season 3 and Zeo elements, as well as any new elements, will come into play. Just some other minor little things to mention at the end that were fun. They escaped back onto Earth with Serpentera, which was really cool. And also, it's funny when they're like, we gotta save Zedd. I kept thinking, there were multiple characters were like, we gotta save Zedd, we gotta save Zedd, and multiple times I'm like, why? If you let him die, all your problems are solved. And then all of a sudden, I think it was Rocky or Adam said, do we though? And I was very happy someone brought that up. I just thought that was a nice little small moment. But overall, I really liked this issue. I thought it was a really strong second issue to this arc. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I'm actually really into what they're doing right now, and I'm excited for what's happening next. But let me know what you guys think of the arc so far. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell. See you notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.